to record it.
Okay.
Oh, yep, it's recording.
Okay, good. All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, Liam. So happy to have you here with us today, and all the way from Australia.
Mm,
Liam Boehm is the
that's the one.
CEO of Liam Stops Tinnitus, and he's a man who's experienced severe tinnitus himself, but he overcame it. And there's many people and many doctors who say there's nothing you can do, you can't cure it. But Liam doesn't believe that. He believes that people can, or at least get it to a point that it's low. So his methods have been, he's had a lot of clients that have actually overcome it. But still today, there's so much misunderstanding about it because so many people, um, including doctors, say there's nothing you can do. You just have to live with it. So hello, Liam, and let's
Hi
just
there.
dig right in here.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's very exciting. I'm actually looking forward to this because this sort of topic that you want to talk about, the actual mentality of it, and like for some people it goes away like this.
Mhm.
Like I just got a message from a guy who's had it for a year, and he just made a couple of changes, and now it's completely gone in one ear and it's going down in the other. And as you said, there's, if you get ringing in your ears, who do you see? You get referred to an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. The thing is, they're not a tinnitus specialist or a hyperacusis pulsatile tinnitus or vertigo. They are a specialist in terms of medicine. They specialize in the field, but it's not, ringing in the ears. They also deal with things like tonsils and, a whole bunch of other things as well. And so, so it's very broad. So yeah, if you want to get into it, ask me a couple of questions and we can talk about, dealing with it and all that sort of stuff. Let's
Yeah,
get
I
into it.
think that the people that I talk to that have gotten stuck in it, they've had other things like they might have an underlying problem or they get confused as to they get stuck in, is it from the hearing loss? Is it from inflammation? Is it from, you know, some kind of illness like Lyme? Is it TMJ? And they get
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I keep hearing. And then there's specialists that say, oh, yeah, Liam, yeah, he pushes this nutrition thing, but, you know, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. So I really
Mm-hmm.
want you to take a stand and
Yeah.
really talk about the people that don't have such an easy transition and how do you encourage them when they kind of get stuck and want to give up?
Good question. So first of all, to address, the people who say, well, there's this 27-year-old dude who says the F word too much online and, he probably doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not medically trained. I didn't go to like Yale or Harvard or any university. I went to music university and I had to drop out because I had tinnitus at that time. But if you look at the people who are, the so-called experts on tinnitus, the experts on tinnitus, hyperacusis, pulsatile tinnitus, vertigo. Vertigo in ears disease, a balance issue usually when you have hearing loss in one ear, and that can set a balance problem into motion. No pun intended. But if you look at their training, it has nothing to do with tinnitus, and it has everything to do with, okay, doctors, repeat after me. You're going to get a patient to come in and they're going to say, I have these symptoms, and you're going to regurgitate this thing back to them. And you have, a couple of options for tinnitus. You can tell them to deal with it. You can tell them that they can take antidepressants, like maybe a SSRI or something like that.
Mhm.
Or you can take benzodiazepines, which by the way, can cause tinnitus in of themselves. Or we can do tinnitus retraining therapy. And if you look at all of those things, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they're all coping mechanisms. They're all dealing with, the actual symptom. They're dealing with the ringing, and they're not dealing with what's causing the ringing. We can get into that. And so when you look at it in that sense, you say, what can I give this person to help them to deal with this problem better? And those things are going to be things like antidepressants, so you don't care about it so much.
So
And even
basically,
some people,
what you're saying is that they're band-aids. They're just complete band-aids.
yeah. And
But
unfortunately,
you saw that you were tired of the band-aids, and you
yeah,
suffered for what, 4 years or?
I suffered, I was basically, it was like two hair dryers in either of my ears for
Mhm.
about 3 years. And I had hyperacusis as well. So I couldn't even do anything. So, turned into a borderline alcoholic, borderline drug addict. I couldn't be alone in a room because it would just go so loud and so impossible. And, you know, I was sleeping with headphones and doing all these things were actually making it worse, like drinking and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so basically I said, F this. And I looked back in my past and I'd fixed my own ulcerative colitis, which was supposedly incurable, with diet. And so I thought, well, why don't I talked to the doctors about nutrition. And, you know, you look at the doctors training in the West, and this is just like a broken record. Everybody knows this. They don't get any training in nutrition. You know, if you want real health, in my opinion, you know, preventative medicine, you'll go and see a chiropractor. So yeah, I was really sick of it. And then I went to all over the world. I went to Chiang Mai, I went to Bucharest, I went to Tbilisi, Georgia to do different things like food. And I thought the food would be better. And what I'm realizing now, and this ties into, you know, doctors thinking that they basically know everything, which no one knows everything. That's not true. But what I realize now is all the things that I was doing to fix my tinnitus. So things like fasting, cold showers, freezing cold baths, avoiding Wi-Fi and muscle release, meditation is great. Relaxation is also great. But what I was doing is I was directly affecting the mitochondria. And so if you look at, you know, we can talk about, if you want me to keep talking about this specific topic, we
Yeah,
can talk
well,
about.
yeah, let's break it down here. A lot of people think it's in the ears, but you've always said no, it's in the brain, and that our
Yeah.
brain is broken.
Mm,
And so well, I want to talk about that study that I sent you to. I'm just curious about what you thought about that. But yeah, let's for the average person or the person that's just getting into this or who's even come a long way but stuck.
yeah.
It's basically what simply is happening when this tinnitus occurs. What is going on?
Okay, so first of all, I want to tell people what's not happening. Okay, and so that's what the doctors are pushing at the moment. Okay, so what's the basic sort of mantra now is either, you know, they might say, oh, you've got idiopathic subjective tinnitus, which means idiopathic means it has no cause, it came out of nowhere. Like, okay. Subjective means only you can hear it, and tinnitus is obviously, we all know, is a symptom of ringing, phantom ringing inside of your ears perceived by the brain. And so they think that that's caused by broken hair cells. So if you look at the ear, okay, you have the outer ear, you have the inner ear, and the middle ear as well. So it goes, the vibration of sound goes down the ear canal into the tympanic membrane, which is the eardrum. And then it gets amplified, the noise gets amplified louder by the three bones, and that pushes on your cochlea. And the cochlea is full of endolymph, okay? And it hits the stereocilia, okay, and vibrations, and it kind of works like water. And it uses potassium ion to travel down the stereocilia into the cell here, which is attached to the stereocilia, and then a neurotransmitter, once it's been turned into electricity, goes down here into the brain. And so doctors say, you know, you've broken these hair cells. They
Mhm.
say you've broken these hair cells, and the brain, you know, you have a pitch of hearing at low pitch here and high pitch here. And normally people have, you know, high end hearing loss. That's very common what they'll say. And they say, so you've lost the hearing here, and we'll get to, you know, is it lost or not in a second. And so the brain hates gaps. And so the brain fills in the gaps with this phantom noise. And I can kind of see what they're saying, because there's an interesting study about baby mice having tinnitus, and that the actual tinnitus, they believe, can be present when, you know, a baby mouse is very, very young, to help the brain map the pathways to the ear and help the functionality of ears. So they believe, you know, that if you lose that part of hearing, the brain thinks that the ear goes back to the developmental stage, and it generates a tinnitus to help build the pathways. But because the stereocilia is broken, it will never happen. That's what they believe. And I really disagree with that, because let's look at how they don't actually look and test and actually look at the stereocilia. They just infer that due to the hearing loss. But let's look at hearing loss. So let's say you're a drummer like myself, and you bust your ears for 13 years with no proper protection. You get the hearing test, you sit in the booth with the headphones on and the two buttons, and they play different pitches and different words in your ears. Now, anyone with tinnitus is going to know, if you're in a quiet room and you put your fingers in your ears like headphones, it's going to get much, much louder, isn't it? It's going to be very loud because there's no background noise blocking it out. So they play you different pitches, and they try to sort of match it with your tinnitus. But what they're doing is they're actually checking for hearing loss. But let me ask you this. If you're playing a pitch and your tinnitus is already loud, and you're playing a pitch which is the same pitch as your tinnitus, or it's a bit lower in volume than your tinnitus, you're not going to hear it because your tinnitus is louder than the noise itself. So you already have that
Yeah.
internal interference blocking out the noise.
Mhm.
And so you come out and then they'll show you a map and they'll have blue for left ear, I believe it is, right for red ear, and they'll map it out and show you. And they say, well, you have hearing loss on this ear. And really, is that really hearing loss, or is that just interference? Now, there are definitely some people who will experience hearing loss. That's for sure. But this, you see what I'm saying here? They
Yeah.
infer from the fact that you can't hear certain pitches, but it's because your tinnitus is blocking it, that you have broken stereocilia, which is your hair cells. And as far as I know, they are irreparable. You can't fix them. But there are studies coming out now, but in mice, showing that you can regrow hair cells. And that's where lots of study and money is going today. And so I get people who have, been told they have broken hair cells, and then they follow just a little bit of my advice, and they change their nutrition and their environment, and their tinnitus goes away, or it gets really better. It
And
gets better really
they've been
quickly.
told they have hearing loss as well?
Yeah, they get told they have hearing loss. So basically, if you go to any ENT, they'll tell you, you say, what caused my tinnitus? And they'll say, oh, you probably have hearing loss.
Right.
But I don't think that's true. So we can get into what I think is happening in
Yeah,
the ear if you'd
let's
like.
hear your opinion. Mhm.
So I think it's a mitochondrial issue. And there are a couple of companies that have cottoned onto this right now, and they have these red light products because mitochondria are like, so first of all, mitochondria are intracellular. So you have the stereocilia here, like my fingers, okay? Then you have the cell, and you have different potassium, sodium channels, and a calcium channel, and all sorts of different stuff. And then you have the nucleus, which has your genetics in it. And then you have the mitochondria, thousands and thousands of mitochondria. And they can help break down food that's already been broken down. And they take in sunlight and the electromagnetic field and radiation from the sun to power, okay, you got the mitochondria, inner and outer membrane, to power it, I'll just simplify it, to create adenosine triphosphate, which powers the body. Now, in an average day, I weigh about 85 kilograms right now. My mitochondria will make probably about 75 kilograms of adenosine triphosphate today. And that's chemical energy. So when you look at the mitochondria, doctors look at everything outside of the mitochondria, but not inside, because the inside is physics and quantum biology. And it's very hard to understand that. I'm still learning myself. It's very hard, lots of maths, but basically they stick with the outside with the adenosine triphosphate. They don't focus on the inside. And the stereocilia has ATP receptors, and it uses adenosine triphosphate. There's a huge amount of power. The ear is always on. You don't have a choice as to whether you hear something. You'll hear it and your ear will process it. Now, those three little bones we spoke about before, they can work to decrease the volume in case your environment is loud. And that's very smart to protect your stereocilia, but they'll also bring it up if it's quiet as well. So what I think is going on is it's a mitochondrial problem, and you're not getting enough adenosine triphosphate, or in some instances you can be getting too much, and that could cause a problem as well. Also, what happens is I'll break it down to tinnitus in a second, but in instances of nutritional surplus, so you're eating too much, your mitochondria, you're always going to have deformed, genetically incorrect mitochondria that are dysfunctional, and they replicate faster than properly working mitochondria because it has something to do with the size of them. They work better. Now, in times of fasting, where you don't eat, they will be eaten and devoured and gotten rid of. Okay. So when I treat tinnitus and I look at people and I help them and I act as though it's a mitochondrial problem, their tinnitus gets better. When I act as if it's like, when people act as though it's a hearing loss problem, their tinnitus just stays the same, and you can be an expert at coping with it, but it will always be there. Habituation, TRT, antidepressants are all just coping mechanisms. So I don't think it's a stereocilia problem, because I've had so many people come to me who say, I got this one guy, a tire busted in my ear while I was filling up with air and exploded. And, I got tinnitus then and there straight away, and I had it for 2 years. And then, I came to you and I started implementing your advice, and it switched from this ear to this ear. And now it's gone in that ear after all that time. So how can it be stereocilia based on that ear? And I said, it's not stereocilia. You didn't have hearing loss in the first place.
Yep.
You probably have a little bit of damage. You could have damaged your eardrum somehow. I'm sure, it's probably fixed by now. But you can have a drainage, and you can have insufficient ATP to power the function of hearing. So, as I said, things like cold showers, cold water, fasting, proper nutrition, sunlight. So a third of the mitochondria, a third of the electrons inside mitochondria are fueled by sunlight, and the other 1/3, so 2/3 sunlight, 1/3 is nutrition. So sunlight is so important. But the unfortunate thing is that your mitochondria can take in what's called non-native EMF, so electromagnetic fields. Everybody always constantly EMF, EMF, and they always talk about the electro and the field part, but they forget the magnetism. Okay, now the sun has a huge electromagnetic field, and after millions of years, our mitochondria, symbiotic, our mitochondria is a separate animal, its own DNA. It works with us. We give it the sunlight, we give it nutrition, we give it a break sometimes by fasting, and it'll give us all the power and energy we need. It'll turn us into a superhuman. But
So
unfortunately, we spend.
if we were to break this down a little bit,
Yeah,
because the science can get, we only have a
yeah,
certain amount of time, and the science can get.
yeah.
What would the average person who has tinnitus, who's kind of stuck, they've tried everything that the ENT has, and simply so that and what do they do when it spikes? Like they start to heal and then it spikes and they get all upset again. And for the people that are really kind of, they know a lot, but they're stuck and they're ready to give up, what do you tell them? Like, first of all, let's talk about it when they start to get better. Well, let's just talk first about, what do you start to do with people who are stuck, who are to tell them to do to finally put it to rest? What are they doing wrong?
You mean to get rid of their tinnitus
Yes,
or their,
to get
okay.
rid of their tinnitus.
So first of all, you have to take a multifaceted approach and realize that the same thing isn't going to work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, different people's mitochondria, you have to look at your mother's heritage because you get your mitochondria from your mother. So, if you can look at that and decide, there's different tests you can do online, but you have to test for yourself. Is it going to be cold water? Is it going to be fasting? Is it going to be sunlight? Is it going to be, plenty of grounding? You have to kind of do it all and see what works for you. And in terms of, people who are kind of like at their wits end, like, is that what you mean? What to do that when it's just, it all gets too much?
Mm-hmm.
One of the best things you can do is to avoid looking up tinnitus stories online and
That's what I
avoid
was going
going.
to ask you. How much of
Mm,
this is a psychological, like,
yeah.
yeah, how
Yeah,
much of it is psychological versus nutrition, and how does that play into the mitochondria?
mm. Well, absolutely. Stress can have a direct effect, and it can actually um, affect the mitochondria in such a way that the electron chain transfer to tunnel actually becomes slower, and as a result, there's less ATP made as a byproduct, so you have less energy, so you have less power for the ears and for the brain. The other thing is, if you're really stressed out and, people are like, oh, Liam, I'm a bit of a stress head and ADD and I'm always looking this stuff up. I need to fix my stress before I fix my nutrition and stuff like that. And I just tell them, well, look, the thing you have to understand is that nutrition is stress. If you're drinking coffee, then you're dehydrating your brain. And your brain requires things like saturated fat and liquid in order for the neurotransmitters in the synapses to actually work. The myelin sheaths, they have cholesterol, so you need fat and cholesterol. And if you're dehydrating your brain and cutting off the blood flow, then you're going to be a lot more stressed. There's people talking about the limbic system and tinnitus, and let's relax the limbic system. It's like, well, that's great, that's actually fantastic, but let's also physically address the limbic system by giving it what it needs. So you can do things like, you can actually get brain supplements which contain brain, things like bovine and pig brain. That's totally safe as long as it's been treated. That will, via the use of ribonucleic acid, can actually help rebuild neural tissue. You can
What
also,
is that? What's it called?
the brain supplement.
Yeah.
Or there's many companies that do it. You can use Ancestral Farms, I think it's called. They get their stuff from New Zealand. They're mostly cows, I think, so you can get that.
Mm-hmm.
They use ribonucleic acid, which is already in the brain. You can eat that. Also, that's also full of selenium and iodine, normally the brain, which is fantastic. The other thing is, people who are stressed out, they can look at thyroid problems. So the thyroid gland, okay, there's a chain of glands that control the thyroid gland, but the thyroid gland is the number one biggest regulator of the fight or flight mechanism, which basically exists as two little thumb-sized balls, okay, just above the kidneys on your back, and they can secrete cortisol and the stress hormones. And if you don't have sufficient iodine and selenium, then your thyroid gland will actually take in bromine and other halogens, and it won't be able to. It's like putting, juice into a car. It's not going to work. Like, it's just going to break down and totally get effed up. You got to take the juice out. You can use salt and different things to do that, and put this selenium and iodine back in. So when people say, I'm stressed out, what can I do? I say, well, you can do all the meditation and all the relaxation that you want, but if you don't actually address the physical aspects of what you're putting in your body, then you're always going to have to do the meditation, and you're always going to have to do the stress relief. Or whereas, why don't you just fix the things you're putting in your body with stress? You're out carbohydrates, for example. People should be reading the book Caffeine Blues and Grain Brain. I have so many people that say, Liam, this is great. My tinnitus is going down. It's gone down by 50% in like 3 or 4 months. And also my anxiety is gone. No more anxiety, because we reduce the carbs, and also we reduce the plants as well. Because if you're having an excessive amount of plants, you're exposing yourself to things like oxalates and lectins and all sorts of salicylates that can really damage your body and damage your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to, if you understand how anxiety works, and you're stressing out, that's one thing you can do there. But let's take somebody who's been doing it for like 2 months, and they're just not getting results, or it's really, really slow, or something like that. So there was a really great story that I've got on my YouTube channel by a lady called Tracy, and she was actually pretty on the ball. And she's about a 38-year-old nurse, and she got tinnitus when a fire alarm went off in her ear. And basically, what did the doctor tell her? You've broken your hair cells. It's for life. Good luck. See you later. Pay on the way out, sort of thing. Just I don't care, sort of thing. Just like, get out of here. Really, just it's awful. Not all ENTs are like that, but honestly, I'd like to meet one that isn't. I'd like to meet and buy him lunch. But so she tried for a year, over a year and a half, the keto diet, being super healthy, and her tinnitus didn't budge at all. So she was super healthy, doing most things right, but nothing happened. And she found me online, and she said, whatever, I'm just going to give you, there's audio of her talking about this whole story. And she says, what, I'm just going to give this guy a go. I see what he has in store. And she does one 24-hour fast, and her tinnitus has gone 100% just from that. So it just goes to show that everybody's different. Some people can change. I had one lady, Emily, from Ireland, who she just changed her diet a little bit and switched to decaf, which I just recommend cutting out coffee, but she just switched to decaf, and her tinnitus is completely gone too. So many people respond to different things. So my advice is just keep trying different things. And also there's certain orders you have to do things in too. So if it's going really slow, you can try things like an elimination diet, cut out everything except one food. I would also recommend getting an allergy test for different foods, different seafood. I mean, I've got a guy in my Facebook group now, Connor, who's allergic to beef. And I recommend beef to everybody, so he can't have it. So that's good to know for him. And since he knows that, his tinnitus is now going down, down, down. So you have to know more about your body, your mitochondria. You can use, is it 21andMe or something? You can use that. You can also use allergy tests where you get a prick test. You get all these different lines, and they do there. But for people who are stressing out, just know that it's not for life. Your ENT is wrong. You can beat it. And once again, it's not for life. The doctors have just guessed the hair cells are broken. It's so hard to break your hair cells. It is crazy hard to break it. I've seen videos of footage of people going in with little rods, minuscule rods, and just flicking the hair cells like this, really hard, and bouncing it back. And to me, that seems like it'd be a lot more powerful than a sway of water swaying a stereocilia. So to me, it just seems completely unfounded and ridiculous that people should be being told that their hair cells are broken. It should be a malpractice, because people kill themselves over tinnitus. Tinnitus tears families apart. People lose their jobs over tinnitus. They lose hope. I have so many people contact me and say, oh, I was a prodigy musician when I was young and I was really good, and then I got tinnitus and I had to throw it all away, which is what happened to me. I was at Victorian College of the Arts in Melbourne, and I was only there for 3 months before it just got too much and I had to drop out, and it was just such a bummer because I loved it.
What you're telling me is that it's inflammation, causes inflammation, loud sound. What about TMJ? I've heard a lot of people say that it can be caused by TMJ, and I don't really hear you talk about that much. Like, can that be a thing, or is that just kind of
No.
mitochondria?
That can definitely play a role in tinnitus. So you know, let's say, so foregoing any like serious jaw problem where like you obviously have dysfunction and you open your jaw and it kind of like, you know, goes down to the side and you would need surgery like that. Foregoing that, I look at TMJ kind of like this. If you're stressed out and, you know, you're always, you're sleeping at night and you're grinding your teeth and you're always kind of tense because of the tinnitus, that can cause jaw problems in itself. So it's sort of like a vicious cycle. I also want to point out what happens when you consume too many oxalates. So oxalates is oxalic acid, which is present in things like leafy greens and especially nuts. And the acid will bind with calcium in your body and it will create what's called oxalates, which is crystals, little crystals, which are
Uh,
insoluble by the body.
mhm,
And those crystals are defense mechanisms from the plants that are designed to kill insects. They will they can kill some insects pretty quickly and they can make them very sick, caterpillars, things like that. But
mhm.
for humans, they're more of like a pernicious poison. So pernicious meaning a slow drip poison. You know, it's like within poison and radiation, like the sun, the poison is in the dose. You sit in the sun for 10 minutes, you're fine. You go out there for 5 hours, you're burnt. You've had too much of it, too much of a good thing. But oxalates are not good. And these crystals can go to your joints. They're actually seeing now that a lot of cases of arthritis are actually, you can basically connect that to oxalate crystals pooling in joints. So they can go in your eye, okay? They can go in your gums. They can go inside of your inner ear. They can go inside your jaw. They can go inside the temporal mandibular joints, which is what TMJ essentially stands for. And what I find is people go, I have TMJ, I'm going to need this expensive jaw surgery and it's going to cost me $10,000 and I have to wait a year and a half to get it. And I say, that's fantastic. You have a year and a half to test all the other things which are cheaper and safer. And we're going to see if we can't fix it with that. And most of the time it works.
So you recommend, one of the things that I read about is that you have a lot of people go on a carnivore diet, or
Yeah.
at least if they can. I mean, I know you're a carnivore because of this oxalate thing, but a lot of people will say, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can, you know, just
Mm,
eat meat." So
yeah.
can they eat I mean, is there a way that if they can't just do an all meat, that they'll
Absolutely.
still get over it, or do they have to actually be carnivore to get over it?
No, I don't think that people have to be full carnivore to get over it. I actually had my very first, you're not going to believe this, but my very first vegan who got silenced, and I'm waiting for him to do a video for me. And I'm going to talk about why I think that was, because he actually put, you know, I recommend, you know, eating more meat, but he's obviously vegan, 21-year-old guy, hoping for a video from him to learn more about it. But what he did was he focused really hard on the things that I'm learning about now and implementing now, which is the physics side. So he had no Wi-Fi. He woke up at 4 a.m. and got the sunrise. And when you get the sunrise in your eye, you set the melatonin cycle so that when you're asleep, melatonin plays a big role in mitochondria. The autophagy actually works when you're asleep and you recycle all the dead cells and mutate a mitochondria and they start producing better energy and cleaner energy. He was doing things like fasting, grounding, more sunlight. He would never use lights in his home, only fire and stuff like that. So, you know, it just goes to show that you don't need to implement everything in order to get silence. But back to your question about the carnivore diet. So I want people to remember that I got rid of my tinnitus 100% while I was still eating about 40% plants and 60% meat. But the thing is, I was doing very often 4 to 5 day dry fasts. And that is
Mhm,
pretty hardcore stuff. And
mhm,
that should not be taken lightly. And a lot of people just can't do it for very valid reasons for their health
mhm,
and other, you know, medications and stuff like that.
mhm,
And so, you know, I started to look for other ways to get the same results as this fast. And one of the ways, obviously, is good sleep. So if you're sleeping deep and you're sleeping properly and you hit you know, there's non-REM sleep and there's REM sleep, rapid eye movement, you actually start to get into people don't know this, you actually start to get into a state of autophagy and ketosis and you recycle the dead cells, which is what a fast is. So a fast is really replicating a really good night's sleep, but we're just jamming it in there when you're awake and it's harder to do. The other thing is when you are eating an all meat diet, some of the biggest benefits don't come from eating the meat. They come from not eating everything else. They come from not eating the carbohydrates, not eating the plants, not eating the processed food, not having the sugar. You know, you got to quit things like smoking marijuana and smoking tobacco and, you know, energy drinks and coffee. And I've already said that, but the benefit of and obviously you're getting the saturated fat, so you're getting the fat for your brain, you're getting the cells of meat are very easily digested by the human body. And when you look at the cells of plants, most of the time you have this hard, you know, shell of fiber. And that's why people who eat a lot of plants tend to poo a lot. And sometimes they often have bleeding and diarrhea and symptoms like that. And you know, they get the lectins that tear their stomach to shreds.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go full meat, people are like, what's going on here? I'm constipated. Like, I'm not used to it. And I say, okay, break this down for me. So you're sitting on the toilet, you really need to go and you can't go. No, I'm not pooing as much. Well, you're not constipated. The body is just like, finally, I can use this stuff. I can absorb all of these minerals and nutrients and proteins, and all the caloric density is more available. So they can actually break it down and use it. And so they have the protein to rebuild the cells that they need when they do a fast. So that's what that lady, Tracy, was doing. She had the proper food for so long, so that when a fast came around, she had everything she needed for that fast to go properly. Or all the protein, all the saturated fat, all the cells, all the minerals, all the trace elements were all there ready for her when she did the fast. So the carnivore diet, you know, people should not just do it the next day, because you can't just jump into something like that, because you'll experience things like oxalate dumps and even salicylate dumps. And that's, you know, your keto rash and stuff like that. You want to do it slowly. You don't want to, people like, I want to get rid of tinnitus now. Well, don't rush, because, you know, you can experience spikes and you want to avoid that. So
How do you
it's a
help?
long,
Yeah. So you basically, I believe in micro steps. So you
yeah,
basically get people on the keto first, maybe, and then see
yeah,
if they, okay. And then,
absolutely.
yeah. So, okay. I know you have a step-by-step program. At least that's what
Yeah.
you have, a step-by-step program. So what do you do when somebody's been trying everything, but now they're kind of discouraged, and then they get a huge spike? How do you get them down off the cliff to know that they just have to keep trying, and, you know, instead of giving up? And the noise
Well,
is like, it's a 10, like,
the
what
first
do you
thing
tell
is,
them?
yeah,
Go
I
fast?
know, I know. No, I wouldn't tell them to do that. No, the first thing is, I've been there. You know, I've been where it's awful and you feel like you're trying everything and it's just nothing is working. And the thing is, you know, sometimes major things like your geography can make a difference. So if you look at the world, you have unilateral magnetism, which is you have the globe here, and then you have magnetism coming out of the South Pole and going up to the North Pole. And unilateral magnetism is very good for electrons. And we spoke about how electrons can power the mitochondria, which can help with the hearing and help with the processing of hearing. And, you know, you're going to hear when something is wrong. You're going to hear it, right? And so, you know, sometimes if you're living in a big apartment building with like 50 different Wi-Fi signals, that can cause
Mm,
problems. And sometimes if you have a mold problem in your home or your body, that can keep problems going. You know, for example, if you have a mold infection in your body, just one time exposure can do it. Mold actually feeds on ketones. So when you're following my advice, you will be secreting a lot of ketones, and mold will have the ability to grow on that. Mold is
mm,
adapted to, they want us dead in the ground. So it's adapted to thrive off of what we usually were in, as, you know, millions of years of evolution, we were in ketosis, just eating meat and barely some plants, but mostly meat. But the advice I would give you, and it's very sort of like, you know, rah sort of advice, but it's like, you just got to keep going, because what's the alternative? The alternative is that you will, you know, live with tinnitus forever if you give up.
right.
And, you know, you don't have to do that. You can, and, you know, also keep a journal and see what you're doing. How strictly are you following? You know, you can pick anyone's advice. You can pick my advice or anyone else's advice. How strictly are you following their advice? Can you implement anything? Can you change anything? Maybe this certain thing is actually detrimental to you. So for example, maybe you're allergic to a type of food, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can change it for something else. Go figure out, you know, remember, everyone has to remember that one size doesn't fit all. We need to test for allergies and mold and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd advise to do that. And really the advice is just stick with it. And I know it can be disheartening, because you look on my Instagram, you look on my YouTube channel, and people are like, oh, I did it for 2 months and I
Right.
just changed a couple of things and it's completely gone. Thanks, Liam. And then you're like, I've been doing it for 6 months and it's like, it's gone down just a little bit, or it's like not changed at all. Like, what am I going to do? And there are people like that too, like Tracy. and other people as well who do it for so long, and it just takes so long. And people have to remember that what we're dealing with is a lifetime of just beating the shit out of your body. And everyone's done that. You know, we have oxalate toxicity, we have bromine toxicity, we probably have a bunch of things like chlorine, which is a halogen as well. We have things that we need to chelate, which means to extract heavy metals from our body, so we can have things like aluminium poisoning and all this other stuff.
So
And we
it's
probably
basically a lot of this is just getting well, getting super healthy, cutting down on the Wi-Fi, handling your stress. And what about herbal tea or tea? Is that herbal tea? Does that dehydrate your brain as well? Or I know a lot of people that get on or take caffeine and then they switch it with herbal tea or.
Yeah, look, I'm just against all that stuff just because of the oxalate density. So people have to remember coffee is packed full of oxalates as well as caffeine. So tea is essentially the same thing, you know, and people need to know as well, when it says decaffeinated, that still means it has caffeine in it. It just has a little bit less. You know, marketers will sell you anything as they'll say anything just to get you to buy it. They'll reduce it by a little bit just to get you to buy something. You know, you'll have a store that'll raise its prices for their dresses to like $1,000 for like 20 minutes, and then it'll take it down to like $300, and they'll say used to be $1,000, now only $300. And they can say it because technically they did it. Like decaf is technically decaffeinated. It's less caffeine. So, but herbal tea I would avoid. You know, teas are just not. I know they're nice, but it's just not a great thing to have. I would just avoid it, you know, and yeah, it can cause spikes, just like Coke and alcohol and coffee and all that sort of stuff. And Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is packed with bromine, by the way, which is awful for tinnitus. It's just one of the worst things ever. So yeah, I would avoid it. So it's annoying, I know, because you look around in the world and you see people who don't have tinnitus and they're ruining their bodies, and they just seem like it's so unfair because it seems like they're invincible. And I know that feeling. Look at like, who's the guitarist of the Rolling Stones? I forget his name, but that guy who's totally ruined his body. And you look at rock stars and celebrities getting drunk all the time, and James Dean and whatever, and like people who are stressed out. Like if you look at people like, you know, politicians who are working all the time every day under blue lights and they just don't get tinnitus, and it just seems like it's so unfair. But you know, that's life. And you know, everyone they probably have their own health problems and their own thing, and then you've got yours and I've got mine, and everyone's dealing with something. But unfortunately, I would say tinnitus is one of the worst things that somebody could have, because it's just always there. You know, it's so unfair to get tinnitus. You know, I would probably rather deal with, you know, a rash or a bowel problem or a vision problem or something like that than have tinnitus again, just because it's so shit. I know exactly how it is. Does that kind of answer your question on that?
Yep, that was good. That was good. Okay, a couple other questions, and then I think we can.
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a little bit. You know, there's people that say the emotional part.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't bring it all together. There's people that focus on, you know, just the emotional part, or you know, they say it's the central nervous system, and once you calm down the central nervous system, that it'll go away. What is your reaction to that?
So
that
I
it's
think
the sound of your nervous system, and that you're just keyed into it because of fear.
No, I don't believe that. I don't think that, you know, some people say, oh, tinnitus is always there, but people just zone out of it. I don't think that's true at all. I don't believe that. I think that it's a mitochondrial problem, and you're hearing the electricity and the dysfunction of the mitochondria right in your ear. I think that's, you know, there's calcification problems too. But about the emotional,
it almost sounds like electricity. I mean, it does. It's like,
yeah, well, it uses potassium ions, and that's what's going to sound like electricity. So that's what I believe it is. Yes, people say it sounds like electricity, and I say because essentially it is electricity. If you have electricity, we're electric before we are chemical. So we have the mitochondria, which does like a lot of, it charges our body, and then it releases ATP, which is a chemical energy, but it was created using an electronic system, the electron chain transfer system across the two membranes. And when that's slowed down, you have less ATP for the ears to work. That's what I think is going on. So to touch a bit more on, you got to handle the emotions and you got to do this and you got to do that. I think that's actually a fantastic approach. I think that's really, really good because people need, that stress relief, and they need to know that everything's going to be okay. But it's limited. So when we look at tinnitus and we look at all the different causes, we have things like TMJ, what we're talking about before. We have things like medications. We have things like noise trauma. We have things like physical injury. We have things like, did I say medications? We have medications. And then we have things like parasites. And then we have things like mold. And then we have things like heavy metal toxicity, like aluminum and mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you can't relax those away. You can meditate and align your chakras all day long, but if you don't address the underlying problem, it's not going to do a thing. So if you look at all those things that I just listed just then, the interesting thing is not only do they come under a list of things that will cause tinnitus, but over on the other end, they're also a list of things that directly inhibit the mitochondria's capacity to create ATP. Physical injury, oxalates as well, is one that will jam itself into the mitochondria or poison the mitochondria to try and kill you, to stop eating it. Plants have a defense mechanism, after you eat them. Animals have a defense mechanism before you eat them. They'll try and run away. But I think relaxation is very, very good. But even in relaxation, if you want to feel better and get rid of your anxiety, you fix your diet. That's one of the best ways to do it. And if you look at the work from Georgia Ede, who is a psychiatrist and who is excellent, everybody should go and watch her video. Georgia Ede, The Little Shop of Horrors. She talks about how she used to say to her patients who had psychological problems, very severe psychological problems, she used to say, "So tell me about your mum." But now she says, "So tell me what you had for breakfast." Because she's starting to realize that what you eat has a profound effect on your capacity to handle stress. So, stress relief, can't even say it. Stress relief is great. It's fantastic. I definitely advocate it. If you want to get active.
You're saying you need both.
I'm saying you need many things. Yeah, you need many, many things. So people think that I'm just a nutrition guy, but if people get my course and look into it, that's just like day one. And then it's like, all right, now you got that handled. Let's go into all the physics. And I have a section called Quantum Tinnitus where we talk about the light and how the sun works and how it charges your ears and how you need to look at the electron chain transfer system and how it's not really a hair cell problem. It's a mitochondrial problem, and how that all ties in with the medication. And, you can't relax away a vitamin deficiency, a mineral deficiency, a toxicity problem, a parasite. I have a girl at the moment who definitely has a parasite problem with her mastoid bones behind her ears. And they're always, her tinnitus will spike and get worse on a full moon. And they tested this with parasites and they're always more active on a full moon. So I'm getting her to take certain things, and the problem and the vibrations have moved from the ears down into the stomach. So now the stomach is getting rid of all the parasites and breaking it down. And so her tinnitus is getting better. And so I'm sorry, but relaxation is not going to cut it. It's a very limited approach. It's a great approach in terms of like handling relaxation. Some people might have really got it handled. It's an excellent way to be relaxed, but it's doing a bit of a disservice to people who get it from, and we want to get rid of it. We don't want to be someone who has to forever avoid stress, always be relaxing. Sorry guys, I got to fit in my 40 minutes of meditation. We want to live a normal life. It's like if you have an injury and you have to wear a colostomy bag where it holds your poo in it and you got to empty it every day, or a catheter. We want to get rid of that. That's like, I'm not saying that relaxation is a band-aid solution, because it's not. It's great. Some people just need that and it works for them. And that's proven that it works. But I would say most people, it can help a little bit for sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But to get silent and so tinnitus goes away when you can return to eating shit and you can return to being stressed out. Because, we all want to achieve things in life, and we need to be able to take wear it on our shoulders, to take it on the chin, a bit of stress without getting a spike. I mean, if you get a spike every time you get stressed, tinnitus is not gone. It was never gone. It was always there. So we want to get it so it's completely gone. Body functioning, everything's working. Endocrine glands are working. Digestive tract is working. The brain is functioning. It's not dehydrated. Electricity, the charge is amazing. You got magnetism sorted. Wi-Fi's off. Lights are off, and you're basically a superhuman. And then people tell me their hearing improves as well. Their visual snow goes away.
What this all boils down to is we're trying to increase the energy
charge
in our body to go to our brain. And I sent you that article what did you think of that article from Harvard and MIT?
Was that the one where he was talking about Alzheimer's
Yeah.
disease? So
Yep.
I didn't see all of it. I saw the first half, but I saw that he was talking about how,
He
you
was
know,
talking about
hearing
the electricity, kind of.
Sorry?
He was kind of talking about the electricity,
Mm,
sort of.
absolutely. Well, if you look at all the diseases that are happening today, they're brain diseases and heart diseases for the most part. And those are the two places in our body where we require the highest amount and density of mitochondria. And, you know, if you look at our world that we live in, we're surrounded, like even right here, we're surrounded by electricity and it's always on us. And there's a great book called The Invisible Rainbow, and it was recommended to me by a client of mine, and it talks about electricity and how it's just awful for human beings and how they used to use it in the 1860s to try and help people, and it just made them worse across the board. And it talks about some really interesting things where, you know, a group of 20 people would hold hands and you shock the one on the end and obviously it goes through, as long as they're grounded. But it also talks about how if you were sick and you had a flu or a cold and you were holding hands with everybody, the electricity would have a hard time passing through you, and it sometimes would not get all the way to the end because you blocked the signal. So
Mm.
that shows to me that there's a problem with your electronic, you know, the electronics. Humans run on DC current. There's a problem with that in your body when you're sick, when you have an infection, when you get a virus. And so many people get an ear infection and get tinnitus in that ear, or they get their ear cleaned out. And it just seems to me it's so glaringly obvious that tinnitus, and if you read that book, The Invisible Rainbow, ringing ears, tinnitus is all through it. I checked on my Kindle, it's mentioned like 75 times in that book. And ringing in the ears is mentioned like 100 times. So it's just so obvious to me that ringing in the ears and tinnitus, even if it's not caused by an electronic problem, inside of you, something else is indirectly caused an electronic problem with your DC current and your charge and your capacity to make adenosine triphosphate to fuel your ears. So you can have, you know, serious malfunction. You know, when you're messing around with electronics and it's not running properly, like a taser, zzz, it just sounds like that. It's just like basically tinnitus right there. And you know, hissing as well. You can get that crackling, popping, hissing, whooshing, humming, whirring, churring, any noise you want. You pick them out of a hat. That one, all right, it's probably tinnitus. You know. So, sorry, I lost track of the question,
No,
but
that's
yeah, I think
very good.
yeah.
I think the last question I want to ask you, Liam, is well, just give two questions. Just for the person who's just learning about tinnitus, what are the top three or four things that they should do right away
Mm.
before, obviously contacting you? But what are the most important things that you would suggest to
Recommend,
them?
yeah. So the number one thing is stop looking up tinnitus cures on the internet, because there aren't any like real tinnitus cures. It's all either you're going to get scammed, or you're going to see the World Health Organization talk about how it's for life, or Joseph Ratzinger how it's for life, or all ENTs saying it's for life, or even people with tinnitus who are trying to do their best to help other people and saying, yeah, you know, with their phone, I live with tinnitus and it's okay and I deal with it. That's horrible for somebody to hear. What, I have to live with it? Don't get in the mode of acceptance. Don't go too far down the road of trying to habituate and learn with it, because then you have to come all the way back and I have to unwind that. Okay. So that's the first thing, is just remember it's not for life. Don't go on tinnitus forums. There are people on tinnitus forums advising each other to how to kill each other, and they should kill each other.
Oh, that's not
And
good.
the
Let's not talk
yeah,
about
it's,
that.
the moderators of tinnitus forum, I won't say which one, but they should be ashamed of themselves. They should be
Yeah.
their parents should be so fucking sad. Sorry for the swearing, but that they grew up to be a person who allowed that to happen on the internet. It's just simply appalling. The second
How
thing
much?
is change the things that are obvious. So if you're eating McDonald's every day, or you're smoking cigarettes, or drinking excessive amounts of coffee, or you know what spikes your tinnitus, but you do it anyway, stop doing it. So it's very hard to quit. But, you know, for example, people that we're just creatures of habit, aren't we? And it's so hard to have willpower to not eat that chocolate, or to not play video games until 3 a.m., or to not, you know, do whatever it is, blast your eardrums with music without protecting them properly. Don't do that. And then the third thing is apply my information on YouTube, as long as your doctor says it's okay. apply it, okay? And then get feedback and see what happens. And, you know, does it go down or up, and which ear goes down, and what did you apply? And then sure, contact me and then present to me the information that you have based on what you've applied. And then we can go from there. I get a lot of people that say, you know, hi Liam, like it's very nice. Like I don't mind it. Like, hi Liam, I've got tinnitus. What should I do? And they've contacted me and they've seen, and you know, I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube telling you what to do. So just do it. Yeah, you know, it's very simple. But people always, you know, they want to see that I'm a real person and just talk to me. That's totally fine. I understand. But the best thing you can do is take action. So those things were, don't go on forums and don't depress yourself even further. Don't think you have to accept it. The second thing was get rid of the obvious stuff that you know is just bad for your body. Don't be silly. Like, get rid of it. Like, don't listen to the articles that say a glass of red wine a night is good. It's not. Okay, it's full of garbage. Tannins being one of them. And the third thing is actually apply something. So, you know, get rid of the bad things, but also apply something. And also don't start off with a fast. This now, what I do now is the carnivore diet is so similar to a fast in my eyes, in some ways that, you know, that's what I advise people to do so they can avoid fasting. I'm sure that if I was fully only eating meat, that I probably wouldn't have even had to have done those long fasts. And that's what I'm seeing in my group. So don't start with a fast, just start with anything. Try a cold shower, try a super hot bath, try meditation, try relaxation technique. Just try something and see what happens. And then cross it off your list. Yeah.
And the last question, Liam, is what do you want to be known for? What is your movement? What is your goal? I know you've been through a lot, and as you look forward in your life, what do you hope to achieve?
That's a really good question, actually. It's a really good question. One of the things that I really want to achieve is to make people tougher, to really, you know, make men a bit stronger and women a bit stronger too, because there's really a sort of a sickness going through the West at the moment, which is really like, I'm a victim and this is my victim status and I deserve free things and I want this and I want that and I don't deserve tinnitus because of this and life is so hard, rah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And, you know, I wasn't raised that way at all. And so maybe that's why I don't like it and I get repelled by it and I just have to get away from it as quickly as possible. It just makes me, I actually feel sick. I actually do feel sick when that sort of happens. And it's fine. I understand people a lot of pain, but you know, if you look at my story, my recent story where I got food poisoning and I died in 24 hours and I was supposed to get my hands and feet cut off. And, you know, it was really, really bad. And now I'm sitting here and I don't have any toes anymore. And I'm still having to get nurses come over and do the dressings and stuff like that. And it was because of necrosis and, you know, the food poisoning was, they thought it was a tick bite maybe or whatever. But I didn't complain once. I didn't think, oh, why me, God? Why I don't believe in God, but why me, God? Why'd you do this? Or I didn't post online. And, you know, I've got a big hospital bill right now. I got about $130,000 bill because my insurance lapsed 2 days before. And it's just one of those things. And I'm not going to go start a GoFundMe and say, I'm so special because I help people with tinnitus and I deserve to have this. Please go fund me, give me free money, basically. And I think people are just really entitled. And so, you know, I do consider myself a bit of a strong-minded person. I don't really put up with much. And I often tell people to just go fuck yourself if they just start, you know, complaining and woe is me. And I don't have a problem with that. But people have a problem with that themselves. They don't like to tell people to go away. And one of the best books that anybody can read for personal strength, men or women, is a great book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. That book changed my life more than probably The Consolations of Philosophy by Alain de Botton is good, but No More Mr. Nice Guy, I forget who it's by, but it is sensational. It is fantastic. And people are just very snowflakey today and weak. And I'm not talking about any political party or anything. I don't care. But to make people a bit tougher, because in order to get rid of tinnitus, you got to be hard as nails, because everyone around you is saying, oh, it's so tempting. Just deal with it. Everyone else is dealing with it. Take the antidepressants. The doctor knows best. So I did that. I went all against that and did it myself. And so now I have a great gift to give people, which is that you can silence tinnitus. So other people, if they want to achieve something or beat something in their life, they're going to have to go through, the muck and the mire, and other people talking, like just running their mouths, You can't do that. You can't do this. And you're going to beat it. And then at the end of it, you're going to have a great gift. I'm not talking about their tinnitus, but anything. They're going to have a great gift to give somebody. So by being a weak person, you're actually disadvantaging everybody, because whatever you put on this planet to do, you don't anymore have the capacity to give it to them. So my goal really is making people a bit tougher. And that's in my course. The first like 6 videos can be summed up like harden the fuck up, basically, is the whole thing. So excuse the French again. But yeah, that's really my goal. And that's what I'm really excited about at the moment.
Liam, where can people find you if they need some help? Where's the best place to find you?
Okay, so the best place to find me would be my YouTube channel. So I've got 2 YouTube channels. The first one I started is called Tinnitus Treatment. The second one I use now is called Liam Stops Tinnitus. Just look for my face, it's easy to find. And also, if you use Instagram, you can go and see a lot of my testimonials and advice on my Instagram stories. That is also Liam_stops_tinnitus. I recommend, if you go on Instagram, click in my bio, download the free ebook. Same as YouTube, go in the bio, download the free ebook. Apply some of the stuff. And if you want to contact me, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Don't think that I'm this horrible person who'll abuse you or anything like that. I'm very, very nice to people who contact me, because I know what the pain is like. It's just other aspects in my life. I just say, that's done, go away. But with tinnitus, teddy bear sort of thing. So that's how they can find me.
Liam, thank you so much for being with us today and giving us all this great advice. And I just look forward to seeing what's going to happen to you this next year. So,
well, thanks very much, Kathy. And I'll hope to talk to you soon.
okay, now don't go away. Don't go away. Let's
Okay.
just stop this recording. I want to ask